Why, hello! It's good to see y'all again. I know it's been a long time, about like 7 months or so, but I have come down from my hermit cave, my hermit dwelling up in the mountains, and I've been using that time, spending that time very wisely, thinking about different things in life as well as typology and where my channel is headed. So it's been spent very fruitfully, and now I've come down from my mountain to disperse my knowledge to the ones I love, which is all of you. Um, Anyway, I may talk about that in another video, but in this video, I'm going to talk about how the types, all 16 types, express the eighth function. And I've been thinking about this quite a lot. So I've written 2 articles on this topic, very long ass articles, by the way, and I've posted it down in the description. The first one is about the nature of the eighth function. The second one is about how all 16 types um, express the eighth function. And I've written incredible amount of detail, written millions and millions and millions of paragraphs. So for you to enjoy about every single type. So these are my observations, by the way. You could find some stuff on this on Socionics, but um, I've combined theory with a lot of my own observations, and you shall see all this stuff in a new light. So, without and the other thing I'm going to talk about, which you might be interested in, is that I've observed that this function, the eighth function, creates attraction, and attraction between types that are not usually viewed as attracted to each other. Or so the thing is, usually in the Myers-Briggs, also in socionics as well, there's this idea about like people being attracted to those who at least share like one function axis that are valued, one at least a pair of functions that are valued. But in this case, I have kind of a different story here, and how the eighth function can cause attraction. So you could read about that down below. And anyways, but in this video, I'm going to touch upon the nature of the eighth function, numero ocho, by the way. And I just spoken to 2 Portuguese people, and they taught me that 8 in Portuguese is oito, but I'm getting off topic. Anyway, so first of all, I'm going to briefly talk about the nature of the eighth function and how all 16 types, all 16 of them, 16, um, express the eighth function. So the first thing I want to talk about is that the eighth function in the Myers-Briggs, in socionics terms, is called the role function, and it's called the role function because um, it is a function we put on like a mask when we interact with others. So this creates a strong initial impression of who we are um, by other people. And this is your first strong impression of other people, is their eighth function. And this impression will dissipate over time. And you'll see that this is not one of the valued functions of the type. This is not something they intrinsically value. Um, there's different ways I see the eighth function play out. One is in socionics terms, it's called a bold function, meaning it's put on very. You could say it's put on confidently. People try hard to use this function. So this kind of contradicts with the Myers-Briggs idea that, aside from the first 4 functions, other functions don't really get expressed that much. But the eighth function is actually one of the functions that you'll notice the most about the other types, actually. Um, So it's a bold function, but it's a weak function. So that means its skill set is not sophisticated. The term weak is kind of a simplified designation. I would rather say that we actually perform decently or adequately in this function for the sake of society. So, which brings me to the other point that besides being our initial impression, is also the eighth function is the way we serve society. So, um, our primary function is dressed up in the eighth function, in the manner of the eighth function, and that is how we serve society. So the reason for this is that, say, your dominant function is introvert judging function. That means your eighth function is an introvert judging function. So if your dominant function is TI, your role function is FI. If your dominant function is extrovert perceiving, your role function is extrovert perceiving. So if it's your dominant function is SE, then your role function is NE, and this goes on, etc. So given that the eighth function and the first function have a similar attitude, um, uh, you will tend to have the appearance of your eighth function. So since I am an INFP, my dominant function is introvert feeling, I have the appearance of an introvert thinker. First of all, simply because they both have a similar nature. They both are introvert judging functions. Um, Second of all, is that I actually use introvert thinking. It's not just the appearance of introvert thinking, but I also use introvert thinking. So if you've watched my videos, you'll see that I use a lot of TI. I take the time to explain things given a certain kind of framework. Um, so, um, so that's that. The other way that I see the eighth function being used, which they don't really talk about in socionics, but I've personally observed, is that it's used recreationally, meaning it's used for fun. So when I read some of these sociologics articles, I kind of see that, maybe the person who wrote them, they have some certain kind of experience with certain types, but not other types. And that's why when you, for instance, when you read the how ESTPs and ESFPs express extrovert intuition, which is their eighth function, you're not going to get a lot of information. You get the information that this is something that they avoid doing, they avoid using. But I've seen ESTPs and ESFPs use extrovert intuition quite frequently, and I know the nature by which it's used, and that's what I write about in my articles, as I'm going to talk about briefly here. So, so it's how we serve society. It's the impression we give at first to others, and as well, it's used recreationally for fun. So, given all that, it's not a valued function because even when we use it for fun, even if we enjoy the use of it, it's not viewed as intrinsically important. It's not viewed as serious. When you do things for fun, it's not like you take it very seriously. So, without further ado, I shall talk about how the types use these functions. So I'll first start off with TI. TI, um, INFPs and ISFPs, they use the eighth function TI. So as the role function. So how this comes off is that if you see Carl Jung, he has a description of the introvert feeler as coming off as rather cold and aloof, right? So actually, this impression is created by introverted thinking. So the reason why is, you know, the fifth function, extrovert feeling, is suppressed. So therefore, the impression of introverted thinking is actually stronger in INFPs and ISFPs. Um, so how you see it come off is that INFPs and ISFPs, they often talk about you can see me talking about things in kind of an academic tone, or we talk we try to take the time to explain how a framework works. Um, and and that's another way it comes off of. So another way it comes off is that INFPs and ISFPs take the time to when they talk to other people, they tend to come off as rather objective and fair. Um, so they really make the effort to be fair when they talk to other people as well. So these are the kind of impressions that you'll have of the type, and eventually, what happens is that this impression starts to dissipate over time. You'll find that even though INFPs and ISFPs take the time to explain how a system works very very carefully, um, they don't actually adhere to introvert thinking. So, um, one way is that INFPs and ISFPs, they want to talk about their personal convictions, and but they use introvert judging function to do it. They use FI to talk about their personal convictions, but in order to elucidate these personal convictions well, in order to the best function to do that is actually introvert thinking, and it's not extrovert thinking. It's not about pragmatism. It's not about work. It's about carefully explaining the system, making sure that making sure you're able to kind of like create a template in which you explain things to people. And as a result, you see INFPs and ISFPs, they often they may talk, they're not like, because I've worked on how I talk, so I tend to do things very dynamically. But INFPs and ISFPs are not actually very dynamic. They're not very expressive. I've done train myself in public speaking, and but by nature I'm actually rather poker face, and I actually don't really move my hands around that much. Um, but INFPs and ISFPs, they tend to be more monotonous, more very careful. Uh, they look like they're very discerning. They're very discerning when they speak, and they're very discerning about the issues around them. But when the more you get to know them, the more you realize they're not really that discerning, or we're not. I feel like I'm giving away a secret, but we're not really that logical. We don't base things on logic. We base things on these felt convictions that are not explainable. At first, we try to dress it up in an explanation, but the more you push us, the more you find and say you'll find that the more you keep asking about that, talking. The thing is, we ultimately will say that things are not explainable. You can't. Things are not explainable. You can't ultimately have a framework to understand things. And in our personal convictions will just show through, and we just have an ethical motive behind what we say. So that is TI and IFPs. The next one I'm going to talk about is TE and FJs. So often the initial impression that I have of EFJs, and anybody has, is actually EFJs actually are very resourceful people. They know a lot of stuff. So they're like almost like resource centers. So you go to them, they know who you could connect to, they know they could rattle off all this like information they have learned and garnered, all these tidbits of information. Um, so and they could yeah, and they could explain these things to you. They're able to so it's like they have a level of pragmatism to them. um and this is not introvert thinking. Like um it's not like this very careful analytical system in which you're trying to um bring things into a framework. It's just a lot of like almost like indigestible facts and factoids that they all know, and they garner a lot of these so that they could be helpful to people. And that's how extrovert feeling pairs with extrovert thinking in the extrovert feeler. Is that since extrovert feelers are striving for some sort of like social influence. They are the go-to person, the network person. In order to become that person, they have to become very resourceful and very helpful in regards to knowledge. So they could even look like a authority figure. So that is the initial impression. Another thing is that I noticed like if you talk, that their contribution to the group is that they would kind of like figure out the logistics. Like we'll do this, and then we'll do this, and then we'll do this, and then we'll do this. So they'll do that kind of stuff. But the more you hang out with them, and over time, you'll find that extrovert thinking is not part of their intrinsic nature, and as in what they actually value. So you'll find that the harmony of the group is more important than the objectives to attain. So they speak of objectives, but then like the more you get to know them, it's like they're not really about the objectives. They're more about the group dynamic, and all that. So I will move on to extrovert feeling. Extrovert feeling in ETJs, ENTJs, ESTJs. Extrovert feeling. So actually, when you first meet an ENTJ and ESTJ, they may look like a ESFJ, they may look like an ENFJ because they know how to engage the group. They they engage the group. They're very friendly, inviting with everybody. They can even play a good host. Um, and they tend to be like they try to like they tend to present like a kind of a cheerier manner, like kind of a cheerier manner. And when they express themselves, they can be very dynamic. So meaning they express their emotions. There's a lot more intonations in their speech. They express their anger, their sadness, but then often the case, what I see is that they are friendly. They are ebullient. Um, so, and this is important in order for them to accomplish their extrovert thinking means because they're more objective oriented, more business oriented. But in order to get engage people in this business orientation, these objectives, if you start talking about these really dry facts and just telling people like the procedure in which to do things that can really bore people. So what they do is that in they engage in extrovert feeling, and but this impression dissipates over time because you'll find that even though they're engaging, they try to be friendly and all that and inclusive. You'll find that actually they're really they could be argumentative. Um, they're kind of awkward with ESTJs and ENTJs are awkward with people, but at first they're very good at meeting strangers. So they could just go up to strangers and talk with them and seem very fluid and very good with people, but then they're actually very stiff with people, and that's the nature of it. So going on to expert sensing in ENFPs, ENTPs. Um, so if you know an ENFP and ENFP and ENTP, they can be rather impulsive. Like they do things kind of like on a whim. They could be even assertive and aggressive um, when they talk about like their ideas, and when they talk about their ideas, they could get into that state. So people think that's all extrovert intuition, but that's actually not true. Extrovert intuition by itself is a function about it's an intellectual function. It's a function about ideas, idea generation. But why do ENFPs and ENTPs have that manner in which they are physically impulsive and they might accidentally land themselves in danger. They're always on the go and all that. Um, that is physical stuff. That is actually extrovert sensing. That is them making an impact on the environment. So when you have like an ENFP, ENTP make some sort of outrageous comment, it's not even words itself. When you listen to the words, the words are making an impact on the environment. It's more than just conveying idea. They also can sometimes say things kind of sharply, and that kind of gets people's attention, make people like go like, "Whoa, what did you just say?" That is a physical impact on the environment, and that is expert sensing. And you know that's not actually their true nature because they're not. They may act competitively or assertively, but what happens is that you'll find that that actually disappears over time. So they're not really that territorial, and they're not really territorial. They kind of lack willpower. At first, they look like they have a lot of willpower because they want you to get excited about an idea. When they get excited about the idea, they need people to be on board to join on their kind of bandwagon so they get the idea rolling, right? But they quickly can lose their momentum because they don't have enough expert sensing. But that is that's the nature of the role functions. That is the initial appearance of something. So that is them. Um, expert intuition, um, expert intuition, ESFPs, ESTPs. Um, this is not something that is written much about online, but because I made personal observations, ESTPs, ESFPs, they can tend to come off as expert intuitives. They could be they have a very goofy sense of humor. They tend to be the comic of the group in the beginning. They crack jokes. They're very clever. They're very clever. They could come up with ideas. And in my experience, ESFPs and ESTPs could tolerate brainstorming. Like they want to, you know, they go out and do things, but in order to go out and do things, you need ideas about what to do. So that is how NE is paired with SC. They have ideas about what to do, and it's all these kind of random ideas. So it's not introvert intuition. These random things that they could do, and they go out and do them. So obviously they prioritize expert sensing, the doing aspect, right? Not so much about the idea, but they could be very creative. I mean, ESTPs, ESFPs are known to be very creative people, and that creativity is not merely physical. It's actually like, how do they come up with all these ideas? It's because of expert intuition. There's the intellectual component to it. They're they can be rather entrepreneurial, right? So that also, like, because they're expert perceivers, since they're expert sensors, by nature of being expert perceivers, they already create the impression of expert perceiving in general, which would include expert intuition. That so that's my impression. They also love to play, like, they like word games. They like to sit down and play imaginative games. So this is what I mean by the recreational aspect of the eighth function. They could play around with imagination. They don't mind sitting around and just keep entertaining ideas, so long as it's not taken so seriously. So another thing is, now we go on to introverted sensing in INTJs and INFJs. Introverted sensing. So by nature of being introvert judging types, they already create the impression of being introvert sensors. So introvert intuition is about foresight and prudence, right? They kind of foresee what things could kind of go wrong, and they want to avoid that, or they want to foresee what kind of opportunities to take, what kind of where to go next, right? In order, so they tend to prepare. As a result, they tend to be prepared. In order to be prepared, you have to be attuned to details through introvert sensing. Introvert sensing will take care of all these details in order to get them to where they want to go. Um, because they are so prudent and have foresight, they look like they're very careful. So they can look careful and conservative. So this is the introvert sensing aspect, in that not only do they think um, intuitively, in terms of danger. This also makes them very physically safe. Like they tend to be safe. They want to play it safe and not get hurt. Um, so that is another way it expresses itself. Um, yeah, they tend to also IST. I notice INTJs and INFJs, they take care of other people's physical needs. So this is their service to others. Is that they kind of present they're very like it's like they're adapting to you. They're like adapting to you, and that kind of is because of intro intuition. They want to act prudently, so they need to adapt to you and therefore not cause any danger for themselves. But that as a result, that also makes them come off as introvert sensing too, because it's about um, they'll need to take care of details and stuff like that. But you'll find that they're actually not very good with details. They tend to miss out details, tend to be more absent minded. So that's that. So ISTJs, I, I'm not really sure if that description was as great on video, but if you look at my writing down below, it'll be a lot clearer. Anyway, for ISTJs, ISFJs, introvert intuition. My first impression of ISTJs and ISFJs, and if you really look, they tend to actually come off as intellectuals, like ponderous intellectuals, not like extra intuition, which is like more of an all over the place entrepreneurial kind of thing, hodgepodge of ideas, but very thoughtful intellectuals, and they do take the time to study things. So their introvert sensing might be very interested in history, for example, but they're also interested not in just the details, but also where the trends are headed. They put it all together in an introvert intuition kind of way. A lot of them tend to be interested in like recreationally speaking, because this is the eighth function, like psychodynamics, sociology, these kind of topics, which involve a lot of intro intuition, and you'll see them engage in it. Um, so they also, they have the presence of an advisor. So an advisor is someone who you would use intro intuition, but they have that kind of appearance as an advisor. Um, the thing is, introvert sensing is paired with introvert intuition because introvert sensing um, wants to take care of it wants to take care of details and wants to take care of physical pleasure, but in order to do so, they need to kind of look out into the future. So in order to be safe, right? In order to be physically safe, they have to look into the future and foresee dangers, right? For example. Um, So that is a way it plays out. But it's a weak function, so their intuition's actually kind of weak. So they're not really that great at foreseeing into the future. So they may actually, and it's also a bold function, so they put it on strongly. So what you will see is that they may come off as rather like skeptical, or um, they tend to more likely see like a negative outcome of what's going to happen rather than a positive outcome. So that is how that plays out. And the last one is introvert feeling in ISTPs and INTPs. How I see it play out is that it's their introvert feeling is very bold, but also weak. So the thing is, INTPs and ISTPs are actually rather polite people when you first meet them. They take the time to be gentlemen or to be ladylike, um, very cordial people. It's not. This is not extrovert feeling. So in Myers-Briggs, they'll attribute that to extrovert feeling, but it's not. Extrovert feeling is more loose. It's more loose. It's uh, um, kind of kind of a fraternal kind of atmosphere, like but introvert feelings more about this kind of more stiff kind of politeness. So since it's bold and weak for them, they tend to come off as like overly like kind of like stiffly formal. Um, Another way it comes off is that I notice when they talk, ISTPs and INTPs talk about their logical systems, they don't necessarily sound like a robot. They actually, when they talk, they dress their introverted thinking up in introverted feelings. So they talk about, in order to engage the audience, they talk about it in terms of their personal convictions. So I notice them using a lot of I statements when they talk, when they carefully break down the system and make sense of things. They'll talk about they'll personalize the message, and this is not, again, it's not extrovert feeling. Again, there is more about their own personal like sentiment spoken in a kind of subdued tone, not in this highly expressive extrovert feeling tone, but in this thing where they take you to where it's at emotionally through introvert feeling, and they use and they talk about these introvert thinking subjects. So that is how it plays out. So yeah, so you can imagine when you have your role function. Um, when you have your role function, you can look like another type. So basically, your role function combines with your auxiliary function and makes you look like that type. So for me, I'm an INFP. At first, I'll come off as an INTP because my role function is TI and my auxiliary is extrovert intuition. So I'm kind of like a shabbier version of an INTP, right? So, so you, whatever type you are, think about the role function combined with your auxiliary. You are, it's like you are a shabbier version of that type. You could kind of, the thing is, we actually adequately fulfill the role that that type tends to play. So I kind of like do kind of adequate bare minimum INTP kind of stuff. But INTPs, of course, do it much better than I do. So and vice versa, they're like an INFP, but they do the bare minimum, like the just the adequate societal expectations of introvert feeling, and they combine it with their extrovert intuition. So that's how the different types actually look like. And I might talk about that in the future. I did write a little bit about it in my article when I compare INFJs and ISFJs and INTJs and ISTJs under my uh, INJ section. So anyway, all of that is down below, so you just check it out. And yeah, so that's it.